Hello, Uli and everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation in this very nice session. So today I'm going to talk about a theoretical work, which is about recognizing autocatalysis in chemical reaction networks. So I work in Paris in the ESPCI, which is a school for the study of physics and chemistry. This work was done in very large part by Alex Blokus, the PhD student at the time, my collaborators David Lacoste and more recently Jeremy Unterberg. So if you think about how to make more of yourself, you see here bacteria dividing frighteningly. And if you think about what is the core of reproduction in cells, of course, it's a coupled system overall. But you mostly think, I guess, about DNA replication because you can imagine that it sustains itself by itself, although we know it's a very difficult task and we have not managed to isolate that task in vitro very easily. So we were wondering about self-reproduction in general, and is there a general theory of self-reproduction? And that was not so obvious, actually. We were a bit surprised. So if you look, those ideas came very early when von Neumann was designing what would be the architecture of computers. He thought about what would be a machine, a program that could, or an entity that could be physically made and makes copy of itself. So that's von Neumann constructor. In the same spirit, cellular automata, which also have to do with the field of artificial life, you can find much simpler systems which somehow make copies of themselves. But here, we are not really talking about physics and chemistry. It's very hard to design a system in physics and chemistry from those ideas. And anyway, those ideas rely on computers and are not general. They are exemplifications of what could be a reproducing system. So obviously, I'm now going to chemistry because that's what we need to build ultimately a reproducing system. And we think, of course, about autocatalysis. I'm going to show a few conceptions about autocatalysis. So you see here two examples of autocatalytic networks in the Formose reaction. So those are sub-networks of the Formose reaction. The most classical toy representation of the Formose reaction is that here, so this is on top is a schematic representation, on the bottom you see the formula of the chemicals. You add formaldehyde, which is a C1 here. So you add a carbon to a C2, you get a C3, some isomerization. Then you add another carbon, C1, you get a C4. And so you break your C4 into 2 times C2, and you have doubled your material. And this is where amplification starts. And you can imagine you have an exponential increase. If you look at another part of the reaction network, you can start from C5 and cut it into C2 plus C3. And you see you have 2 ways to recover C3. So you can make it from C2 or recover it again from C5. So it's not exactly the same. You see here that you have 2 loops. So this is another architecture of an autocatalytic network within this big autocatalytic network of the Formose reaction. If you think about autocatalysis, you also think about autocatalytic sets, potentially. They have been formulated by Kaufman, Pim van Dijk, and different authors. So let me explain this simplest possible autocatalytic set, where you have a molecule X that is a catalyzer for the making of molecule Y from food F2. Molecule Y is a catalyzer for the making of molecule X from food F1. So you have here cross-catalysis from food, and they help each other. But what's different with before is that in this white square, you are representing a catalyzed reaction, which was not the case in the Formose reaction. So this looks like something different. So you may wonder, okay, have we done, is it all what is possible? In the end, it's both autocatalysis, so is it the same? Are they in the same category or not? And wondering about that, we realized there was not a systematic exploration of the definition of autocatalysis in chemical reaction networks. And that was a bit surprising to us. So we went back to the definition of chemists, the standard definition from the IUPAC, which actually is pretty useful and is the basis of our work. So I'm going to read it rapidly. A catalyst is a substance that increases the rate of a reaction without modifying the overall standard Gibbs energy change. The process is called catalysis. Catalyst is both a reactant and a product. And catalysis brought about by one of the products of a reaction is called autocatalysis. So the first important point is to realize that autocatalysis, as its name says, is a particular case of catalysis. What we did here somehow is to generalize what you can understand by a substance. A substance, we don't understand it as a pure chemical product, but as a set of products potentially. So that's where you get the idea of a network. So if I re-summarize this criteria, you have three types of criteria: kinetic, so you must accelerate the reaction; thermodynamic, and you have stoichiometry. And this is what I will really dive into. And so what's the criterion about stoichiometry? The catalyzed reaction must be conditional on the catalyst. The catalyst is both a reactant and a product of the catalyzed reaction. And so you have autocatalysis when the stoichiometry of the product is larger than one of the reactant. A first very formal point, but which is important, is that you can represent chemical reactions in many different ways, potentially. It's a choice of the chemist to write it in a way or another. But it is important to represent them with sufficient details so that you can recognize catalysis and autocatalysis. So just to make it clear, if you look at the reference reaction A gives B, and you count how many A disappear and B appear, you have a -1 and 1, and here you have no E, so it's 0. If you write now a catalyzed reaction, you have E on each side, and so it cancels out, and you have the same vector if you count molecules. And now if it's autocatalysis, you have E equals B, but then it also cancels on both sides. So you still see the same vector. So there is no way you could recognize a catalysis or even autocatalysis if you represent reactions like this. So you must impose a choice of representation, which is non-ambiguity, that a reaction must be detailed enough in its description so that the species is either a reactant or a product, but never both. If you do that, then you have a signature of catalysis in your stoichiometric matrix. So the stoichiometric matrix is a representation of how many molecules appear and disappear in each reaction. And so here you see column 1 is reaction 1 prime is reaction 1 prime. Column 2 prime is reaction 2 prime. And you just count what appears and disappears. And then you make a separation. So you are going to look at submatrices. There is a catalytic system, which is made of the enzyme E and the complex EA. And you have the substrate and products of the reaction, so what is transformed by the reaction, which are A and B. If you represent as a graph just the subgraph of catalysis, you have here a cycle. Now, if we do the same for autocatalysis, we consume A in blue, and then if you look at the submatrix, it's the matrix of the catalysts. You have this, which looks very much like the elementary cycle of the Formose reaction. So you have B, and then A and B make 2B. So implicitly, you have the blue food, which has not been represented in this final graph. It is, of course, consumed to be able to run this cycle. But what we are going to look at are now what an isolated catalytic motif must look like. Can we recognize it in a stoichiometric matrix? So here I exemplify the case of Michaelis-Menten scheme, where you have a substrate that gives a product. And when you have an enzyme in between, if you apply the non-ambiguity condition, you have to write the intermediate complexes so that nothing is both a product and a reactant of a single reaction. And now if you make the graph of a catalytic cycle, that's what you get. So you consume a substrate, you have this catalytic loop where you recycle, you make the complex and then you recycle the enzyme and you have the product. This is also to illustrate the condition of autonomy that we impose as in the definition. Reaction must have at least a reactant and a product in the catalytic set, which implies you can show that the reaction is conditional on the catalyst. So the catalyst or sets of the member of the catalytic set must participate to the catalytic set. It sounds a bit tautological, but you must import that. The other way would be if you don't import that, you would be able to create things out of nothing and make any stoichiometric outcome. So that would not be valid. So here you have now a mathematical condition on the submatrix of the total stoichiometric matrix to find a catalytic cycle, which means basically that N is autonomous, so it is conditional. The catalysis is conditional on catalyst. The catalysts do not change before and after the reaction, but you do transform something. So this is the third reaction. So this idea was already proposed in general in some other articles, which I put below for example. Now for autocatalysis, actually the condition looks simpler. You still have this autonomy condition, which means that you have conditionality of autocatalysis on the catalyst. But then stoichiometrically, it means that you should be able to find a reaction vector, so a set of reactions, so that the set of catalysts increases in quantity. So I'm going back to the IUPAC definition of this sense. So what does this mean? Like you have a recipe to detect autocatalytic motifs in stoichiometric matrices. First, you should write the chemistry so that non-ambiguity is verified, and then you find submatrices with plus and minus in every column, which is the autonomy condition, that has a positive image. And this is a mathematical criterion that applies only to a submatrix. You don't have to consider the rest of the reaction. And this is particularly interesting. So from this concept, actually, you can mathematically demonstrate using some graph theory and some ideas about determinants, prove that any autocatalytic system is either of one of these forms or contains one of these forms. So it is not that every system is like this, but it must contain at least a system like this. And you have mathematical properties that come also is that the system must be square in the sense that in a minimal autocatalytic system, the number of species must equal the number of reactions. The corresponding stoichiometrics must be invertible, which is a very strong condition. And you also have a single reactant per reaction, which is really not something given. But this is only valid for minimal autocatalytic motifs. So here, if we examine them a little bit, the type 1 corresponds to what would be the Formose reaction, the toy model of it, where you have something at some point, you break it into two copies of the same. Here you have something that looks a bit crazy. It's a cycle of cycles. And here you may recognize, for example, the Michaelis-Menten type cycle. So it's a cycle of catalytic cycle. And that, we'll go back to it immediately, corresponds to autocatalytic sets in the definition of Kaufman. And then you have other types. So type 3 is that when you have a species and a succession of reactions, maybe, that give two different products, and then you have two branches that allow to make the same initial product in two different ways. So this contrasts with type 1. And then you have type 4 and 5, which are kind of complexifications of type 3. Those types arise from the mathematics, but we have not found examples in nature or in synthetic chemistry. So that would be very interesting to find or to build. So if I go back to autocatalytic set, if you write an autocatalytic set in our formalism, this is how it looks on side B. So you eat F1 and F2, and you make catalyst X and Y, which catalyze the loops C and C prime. So metabolism is not autocatalytic by itself in cells, but interestingly, in metabolic cycles, you can find those autocatalytic motifs. So it's well known that the reverse Krebs cycle can be made autocatalytic, for example. So it would correspond here to a type 3 in my classification. If you look at the Calvin cycle in photosynthesis, it has a crazy structure, and you find within it a lot of sub-autocatalytic motifs, for example. What we have done too is to do a viability analysis and to compare how viable, so what is the probability that an autocatalytic motif survives? So here I'm going very rapidly on it, but we have compared 5 autocatalytic motifs, considering that every reaction has the same specificity and same rate, but we only varied the topology of it. And to summarize this result, you can compute the extinction probability as a function of the specificity of the reaction. And what you find is that an autocatalytic system is more robust if it contains more cycles, which you can understand is a sense that gives you more chance to retry a step. So in this sense, it is an idea that is in favor of, at some point, larger robustness, for example, of autocatalytic sets compared to the Formose reaction. So another idea, when you start to recognize those motifs, you can try to design also some systems, and this led Alex to the idea that autocatalysis could emerge from multiple compartments. So if you look at a simple reaction, a bimolecular reaction, where what is in the bottom here gives orange and pink. In a single compartment, it's absolutely not autocatalytic. But if you put it in a set of compartments with semi-permeable membranes, where the pink membrane only exchanges molecules with pink and the orange membrane only exchanges molecules with orange, you have an emerging system where you recognize a type 3 autocatalytic motif. And so this is autocatalysis by facilitated transport, I would say, between compartments. So this shows you that you can trade off some of the complexity of the chemistry with complexity of the physical chemistry in terms of specific transport. A last result I would like to point to is that, recently it's under review, we have not published it. But then you have another question, which is which system can spontaneously start from a very few molecules? And here, with Jérémy Hurtenberger, we could show that actually the criterion is even simpler. You take your reaction graph as with the conventions we described before, and you only keep one-to-one and one-to-several reactions. You find strongly connected components, and if you have presence of a fork or of branching of stoichiometry 2, you are guaranteed that this subsystem is autocatalytic in the stoichiometric sense, but also in the dynamical sense, because you can prove that under those conditions, the growth rate of the dynamics is positive. So this is very interesting because it's kind of what would be a building block of chemical evolution just from autocatalytic subsystems. I'm going to finish. I don't know if I was short or long. So those are our perspectives. Interestingly, those definitions of autocatalysis provide a very well-defined criterion to search algorithmically for autocatalysis in large chemical reaction databases, and that's something we would like to do. Don't hesitate to contact us if you're interested in this. There is still a lot of work to do. I mean, this is only the beginning. First, those are only the minimal motifs, so it's not given that we need to understand the relationship of those motifs with a larger set, which would be autocatalytic, and also with the environment. And for this, I think we need, as in analysis of metabolism like FBA, to understand what are flux modes, and also, of course, the relationship with thermodynamic and kinetic parameters, which represent a lot of work to do. And as I said, it's good because at least we can recognize our building blocks of chemical evolution, where here I represent in a very schematic manner the fact that you would have replicators. And if you have rare reactions that can trigger new autocatalytic cores, you could imagine that you have a stepwise accumulation or replacement of replicators based on purely autocatalytic networks without template-based replication. So here are the two articles in which you can find those ideas, and yeah, I would be happy to discuss later.